guys, it's Megan back for Megan's Musings again this week. I'm so glad you're tuning in again. We're going to tackle a hotly debated topic. Wait for it. Stretcher bars or no stretcher bars? It's not really hotly debated. I think that it's something that has become more and more widely used in our craft as people get more into specialty stitches and things. Stretcher bars were, I don't know when they were invented. I have no idea, but I do know that in the early days, so let's say in the 60s and the 70s, nobody was using stretcher bars. But now a lot of people do. And I'm going to go back to, there are absolutely no needlepoint police, and there is no law and order in our world of needlepoint. But I'm going to just give you some reasons why you might like to give them a try. First of all, they're rather inexpensive. So if you want to test out stretcher bars, they range in price from like $2.50 to like, I don't know, $5.50 or something. So this is not a really big expenditure if it's something you just want to test out. So stretcher bars, why do we need them? Why do people use them? I use them about half of the time, and I'll get into that here in a minute. So there are two different types of stretcher bars. There are what we call regular stretcher bars. They're a little more substantial, and there are petite stretcher bars or minis. I often say petite, but really on the package they're called minis. So there's regulars and minis. The first thing to know about regulars and minis is that they're just not friends. They don't work out together. So there's a sort of a thickness difference. So regulars are a little heavier than the minis. People sometimes like minis because they're lighter. People sometimes like the regular ones because they're a little more substantial. They last longer. These are just made of a balsa wood. It's not a heavy tree wood. It's not, you know, this is not maple, this is not oak. So these are not intended to last forever, but they are intended to be used over time and to use and reuse. So my first suggestion would be, if you're going to journey into stretcher bars, choose one camp and stick with that for now, because they are interchangeable, size interchangeable. So once you begin to collect these, and so these are all labeled number 9. This is another tip. These are just pieces of wood, and so we do suggest using a marker and making a note of what size they are, unless you want to go back to your measuring tape over and over again. But so these two friends are separate, and there are reasons to use petite or minis over regulars. The regulars go up higher in size. The petites stop earlier. So they, and that's actually a good thing, because you don't want to have like a 16-inch mini stretcher bar. It's just not sturdy enough. But so they're not friends, but choose one and stick with it, and begin your collection with one or the other so that you can begin to interchange them. Next, what I'm going to show you is how to use them, right? So stretcher bars have these little kind of like puzzle piece fits. This, I'm going to get up here and show you, is wrong. You see that? I'm in the camera. This is right. So do you see how they fit together nicely, very easily? And I tend to just slide them in just a touch so that they get started. Otherwise, I have a hard time, and I'll show you how I put them together later. But let me back up, because I forgot one thing. The very first thing to do is to take your canvas and actually measure it. So this canvas, I have a measuring little implement here in front of me. So this one measures exactly 8 by 8. Now, if this were 8.5 by 8.5, I would not go up to 9, because if you think about it, these 9-inch stretcher bars, I'm going to hold up here, this canvas would fall right through. There's too much distance between them, and so this one isn't going to attach. So you always have to go down. Now, some people are a little more precious about their stretcher bars, and they want to make sure that their canvas is the exact dimension. So you can trim it down a little bit, especially depending on if you're going to stitch outside of the area that is the selvage area around your painted canvas. But you don't want to cut too much, because you want to make sure that you're easily able to get in and out on the selvage edges of the sides of your painted canvas. So back to this. So I have measured that this is an 8 by 8 canvas. So these happen to be 8x8 stretcher bars. These happen to be 9x9. So just for the purposes of instruction, I'm going to use these 9x9s. So these go together, and these are square. They don't have to be. You can put together a 10x8, a 9x6. It just really depends on what the size of your canvas is. So we put these together. Like I said, I'm kind of a weakling when it comes to my hands, so I just like to kind of tap these together like this. And then here at the shop, we use this brick surface over here to really pound on these. I'm just going to use this surface today just for purposes of instruction. It's a little loud, but I just tap these together like this. Sorry for the noise, guys. We used to use a door frame at the old shop, which was awesome because it helped it stay square. And that's kind of, again, you can kind of see this is a bit of a trapezoid there. It's not a full square. So you want to make sure that this is pretty square because that's really the intention of a stretcher bar, is to keep your canvas squared up. Now I'm going to put these together, exact same thing. These are a little more used. You can see I've used these a lot. Do you see all the holes in these, and do you see how they kind of fit together more flimsy? Some of that is because these are the thinner stretcher bars, the petite stretcher bars, but really a lot of that just has to do with the fact that they've been used multiple times. I'm able to kind of really push these together easily. Again, some of that is because it's a thinner wood and they're easier to put together, but a lot of it is because they've been used a lot and they've stretched out a little bit. So I'm going to show you another little tool here. So first I'm going to show you how to put these on, and I'm going to show you another little tool that helps us keep our more flimsy stretcher bars squared up. So I now have an 8x8 set of stretcher bars to put my 8x8 canvas on top of. I put it down, and what I do is I attach tacks with my fingers at the top center, which I would call 12 o'clock, the bottom center, which I would call 6 o'clock, 9 and 3. And I'll show you a close-up of that in just a second once I get to that point. So here you go. So this is how I start. I make sure that it's pretty taut, pretty sturdy on there. And then the next thing I do is I begin to work counterclockwise. I'm not exactly sure why I work counterclockwise. I think it's because I'm right-handed, so my dominant hand attaches the tacks and my non-dominant hand pulls the canvas. So I'm going to get up here, make sure I'm in the screen, but I pull this like this, and I do a tack about every inch. So let me grab my tacks. And I just continue to kind of tug on this guy, this canvas all the way around, counterclockwise. I'm going to run out of tacks here, but you understand the idea, right? So the idea of this is that it stays very, again, taut. I hate using that word because it sounds silly, but it just keeps it tight. It keeps it very taut across the stretcher bars, and it gets it a really good kind of setup for you to begin your stitching. So since these stretcher bars are a little wonky, we have this special little tool that was developed by a young man, and I cannot remember his name at this exact moment, but it was brilliant. He used his 3D printer and created his mom these frame locks that you stick in the corners. They use a tack. And that really keeps your canvas squared up. So oftentimes people use these right when they put their stretcher bars together. They just go ahead and put a set of frame locks on there. I don't think that's especially necessary unless your canvas is, your stretcher bars are a little weak and they're wobbly. But another thing that these come in handy for is if you're working away, you have done a lot of stitching, maybe you didn't have enough tacks, so you didn't have it really tight on there, but you're thinking, man, this thing's kind of loose. So you can come in here and add the frame locks after you've already begun stitching, and that will also help it get squared back up again. So there's a lot of extra little accessories for the stretcher bars, and one of those things is this frame lock. Some people swear by these, some people love them. I tend to only use them when I think that my stretcher bars are a little out of square, and it kind of supports them and keeps them squared up. So that's frame locks, and that's a stretcher bar installation, canvas installation on your stretcher bars. Like I said, if I had enough tacks, I would go around and make these about an inch and really get that really nice and tight. The other thing that you're going to need, fortunately or unfortunately, however you want to look at it, is a little jewelry for your canvas now. So when you're using a frame, a stretcher bar frame, you have to use a needle minder because there's no more of that weaving your needle in and out to hold on to it. You can, I've done this before, like if I'm out of, if I don't have a stretcher bar, I stick it up there in the tape. But why that's a bad idea is because you'll get some residue on it and it's kind of annoying. So it really is advisable to use a needle minder. Needle minders come in a million different varieties, a range of prices. You can get really small, tiny ones that are, $5, $6, $7, $8, and you can go up to the really beautiful blown glass ones that a lot of us collect that are a lot of fun. And maybe we'll talk about needle minders again and how some are, not all needle minders are created equal, and there's a lot of different types of them. So, but I do suggest getting a needle minder or having a double set of very strong neodymium magnets to hold your needle when you are on a stretcher bar. So that's the stretcher bars. They're together. Which ones do I use? Like I said, I have kind of collected both. I like the light nature of a petite or a mini stretcher bar. I think that's great. But I most frequently use these regular ones. And the reason for that is because I oftentimes use my stand. Again, I am not going to suggest that everybody who starts on a stretcher bar go out and buy a stand, but I'm just suggesting that using these larger stretcher bars, your clamp is a little easier to clamp on the larger ones. The mini ones absolutely work. I just kind of like the ability to have a thicker stretcher bar and to have it feel a little more sturdy to me when I'm on my stand. The other thing you can do, and actually, it's funny. Just this morning, I was working with a stitcher who was returning to the craft, and she said, "I've never used stretcher bars before. Why do I need to do that?" And I said, "Well, you absolutely don't. You really don't have to." However, she was also mentioning to me that she was interested in starting to use some new decorative stitches. And I said, "Well, let me give you a little tip. Oftentimes, when you're using decorative stitches, you want to use both hands. So the stand works great for that, but so does a frame weight. And a frame weight is really just a bean bag. It's a heavy object. You could use anything in your house. You could use a stack of books. You could use whatever you want, or just a heavy book. But really, this is great because it sits right here on the edge. I'm not sure if you can catch that, but on the edge of the counter here. And it holds it so that I have two hands free. So top reasons to use stretcher bars are to keep your canvas square so that there is less need to block your canvas in the finishing process, and to keep your hands both available. So using a frame weight, using a stand to keep your project stable so that you can use both hands. Some people stitch with two hands. A French knot requires two hands. A lot of those stitches you want to maybe use your finger to hold down to make sure your canvas is smoothed out, or excuse me, your thread is smoothed out. You can also use that non-dominant hand for a laying tool, which we can get into that again later too. I'm not trying to bombard you, rather people that are new to the craft with all kinds of information, but I just want to make sure that you understand the reasons why or why not to use stretcher bars. So there's not a lot of difference in price. The petites, the minis are going to be a little less expensive because they're a little bit smaller. There's a little less wood. The regulars are going to be just a tiny bit more, but again, this is not a cost prohibitive accessory for your canvas and for your stitching. So I think that kind of wraps up stretcher bars. I'm going to say one more thing. We are not demonstrating extra large canvases today. Stretcher bars, we will put this in the notes because my brain is not going there for me, but I think they go up to 22 inch. So you can use a stocking. You can stitch a stocking. You can stitch your mahjong large mat canvases. You can stitch tree skirts. Large canvases work for stretcher bars. You can use a canvas that is larger than the largest stretcher bars. And we can demonstrate that again at another time if anybody's interested in that. But sometimes people have a canvas that's large and it goes over top because they just want to work on a little part. We would just suggest that you precariously and carefully tack the painted canvas into the sides of the stretcher bars so that you're just careful to not upset the paint. But really, you can move this one frame around to different areas of a larger canvas and use that there. Belts, people will take sort of maybe just a stretcher bar just like this and attach one end to a belt here and one end to a belt here. It works. It's helpful. It's not, the whole thing is not taut. The smallest stretcher bar, I believe, is a 5 inch, And most strap and belt canvases are in the 3.5, 4 width range. So there's really not a small enough stretcher bar to use on the ends. There are tools like a scroll frame. There are belt frames. There's a whole world of other types of frames, but this is really just the basic starter. Get yourself going, try working on a frame, see if you like it. Guess what, guys? If you don't like it, you can just take this little blue tool that is in the attack case and you can pop these right off if you're using that. I'd be remiss if I also didn't mention Lauren, our pal Lauren here at the shop, her Desert Island tool is the core jack. These tacks are exactly the same thing. They come in a little bit of a different case, but this comes with a tool to actually push it on and a tool to pull them out. And so this is magnetic, this little tool. It'll magnet the tack right on the end, and you just use the soft part of your palm to push those tacks in. So I think that really wraps up stretcher bars. I hope that that gives you an idea of why to use them, why you might give them a shot. And again, there are no needlepoint police. This is a hotly debated topic, but we just suggest giving it a shot if it's something that you're interested in. So thanks so much, guys. See you again.